Number 10. Kid Omega. Some people don't like to count the West Coast Avengers, but I certainly do. They're just so fun. Of course, one of the recruits on this team is none other than fan favorite Kid Omega, aka Quentin Quire, the character who has a habit of dying repeatedly on Krakoa currently as part of the Dawn of X line. Kid Omega joined up with Kate Bishop's West Coast Avengers at the beginning of Kelly Thompson's run in 2018. This run, by the way, is just wacky and delightful, and if you have yet to check it out yet, I highly recommend it. Number 9. Deadpool. If you talk to Wade, he'd consider himself a member, or at the very least former member, of the X-Men. He'd be wrong, but that's how he would likely see it, so for that I'm gonna count him. And there was a time, however, when he did at least appear to hold a probationary status with them, when Cyclops thought it might be better to keep a closer eye on Wilson, who wanted to join up at the time, rather than let him besmirch the name of mutants everywhere with his unchecked actions. That of course didn't last very long, but he has also been a member of the mutant team X-Force. When it comes to joining the Avengers, he's been on a few different Avengers teams. One of his most recent appearances was when he joined Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel's War Avengers in War of the Realms. He's also been a member of Steve Rogers' Captain America's all-new, all-different Avengers, and I don't really know how much more Avengery it gets than serving under Captain America. Avengery, is that a word? It's not, but it is now. Number 8. Cannonball. Cannonball was recruited to the Avengers after the events of Avengers vs. X-Men. Captain America felt during those events the Avengers had in a way let their mutant friends down and could have done more to help them. In an attempt to move past this former conflict and foster more community and trust between the two superhero groups, he recruited Cannonball along with Sunspot to join the Avengers. I always feel like Sunspot makes more of a splash, so I thought it might be nice to also acknowledge Sam's appearance here as a character and often underrated mutant hero. Sam has not only worked alongside the X-Men team, but is also one of the founding members of the New Mutants team as well. Ka-ching! Number 7. X-23. While Laura Kinney may not have been part of the main Avengers team, she was part of the Avengers Academy. She joined up after the events of Fear itself, and during her time there bested Tigra in a sparring match, proving even more so that X-23 would make a deadly addition to the Avengers team someday, should they ever want to recruit her on a more permanent level. X-23, currently known as Wolverine, is a genetic female clone of Logan, created using his genetic material and that of her own creator and birth mother, Sarah Kinney. Laura was raised to be a killing machine, a skillful trained assassin, but ended up escaping the facility and company who raised and used her. Since finding Logan, her genetic father in a way, and the X-Men, she has served on multiple different heroic mutant teams. Number 6. Havoc. Havoc was one of the members of the Uncanny Avengers, composed of a weird mishmash of characters, mutants and non-mutants alike, who initially united to take down the superpowered Red Skull, now armed with the mind of Charles Xavier. Havoc joined the team in the first issue of the series, despite being a conflicting character when it came to his usually unstable alignment. Havoc has been on both sides of the spectrum, being a hero at times and a villain at others, and sometimes he just gets lost in between the two labels, like he appears to be currently in the comics, on the brink of almost losing his sanity. Poor Havoc. Honestly, so much terrible things have happened to Alex, and I just feel really bad for him. His time starting out with the X-Men was also initially pretty traumatic during the time he spent avoiding joining Xavier's school or team. However, eventually he did end up acquiescing and joining them, happy there for a time before Madeline Pryor came around and, well, corrupted him. Number 5. Magneto. For those who think Magneto is just an evil mutant who is born enemy to the X-Men, he has also spent quite a bit of time working alongside them as well. Most notably, Magneto was actually a leader of the New Mutants team while working alongside the X-Men. Despite the fact that he and Charles haven't always seen eye to eye, even Professor X knows that Eric can be a powerful ally. So, how did he make his way onto the Avengers? Well, this of course happened during the Axis event. After many major heroes had their alignments inverted, Magneto was one of the superpowered now heroes to be recruited into that temporary, technically non-official Avengers team. Number 4. Rogue. Rogue joined the Uncanny Avengers in issue number 4 of the 2012 series. She would become the field leader for the Avengers Unity Division. She was first approached by Wanda Maximoff, aka Scarlet Witch, who asked her to stick around on the team after Rogue helped them out in issue 4. This was also the same issue that Scarlet Witch joined, and of course was after both the events of M-Day and after Wanda had just been used as a pawn by Red Skull, who at this point was immensely powerful after stealing Xavier's brain and gaining his immense psionic power. Super comics, I know, stealing someone's brain, but here we are. So there was a lot of tension between these two women, but Rogue ultimately did decide to stay on the team. Now, not because Wanda asked her to though, and because she wanted to move on, but because she knew it would be what Professor X would have wanted, and because she basically didn't trust Wanda or her powers and wanted to stick around to keep an eye on her and to prevent her from making a giant mess of this whole situation, which she felt was all Wanda really knew how to do. Ouch. Poor Wanda, she can never catch a break. Number 3, Storm. Storm actually joined up after my number 2 was on the team. We'll talk about them in a minute, no spoilers, but see if you can guess based on this timing who is going to be next. Storm ended up joining during Bendis' run on Avengers in 2012 in issue 19 on that run. She was actually recommended to the team when Captain America attempted to re-recruit Black Panther. Now Black Panther said he just wasn't interested at the time, he just wasn't feeling it, and when Cap explained his reason for needing Black Panther as wanting friendly faces, T'Challa told him that what he thought the team needed actually was just more firepower. What Cap needed in his opinion was his wife, Storm. And so Storm answered the call, ended up joining the team for a time. She was even prominently featured on the cover for issue 21. I love this cover, it's just so cool. I think Storm should be on every team. Storm should lead every team, that's what I think. Number 2, Wolverine. Wolverine has been part of both the main Avengers team and the Avengers Unity division, being as popular as a member of the X-Men as he is. I'm actually surprised it took Marvel as long as it did to include him on the team after the Avengers became this sort of ever-expanding team that just had so many branches and card-carrying former members as well as rotating members and honorary members. It just has become there's a lot of Avengers. Wolverine was invited to officially join the Avengers in the 2005 New Avengers series in issue number 6, after Cap and Iron Man had a brief discussion about whether or not Wolverine would be a suitable pick for the team. Steve was concerned that Wolverine was a murderer and therefore not suited, but Tony insisted, saying that he was their missing ingredient, the thing that their new team needed. And also he was like, he's not a murderer, he's a samurai. Or maybe a murderer and a samurai. I think you can be both. I don't know, can you be both? Is that dishonorable? Apologies to any samurai watching this. Number 1, Beast. We've seen Beast featured on the Secret Avengers team, but like me, you may have forgotten that he is essentially a core member of the Avengers, first becoming a probationary member in the Avengers Volume 1 in issue 137, and then gaining full membership in issue 151. Beast was likely the first X-Men member to become a full member of the main team, and although I tend to forget about it because he goes just so far back, he's essentially a core member, or he was a core member for quite a while. If you're wondering how exactly Beast ended up on the Avengers team when the X-Men and Hank's ties to them are so prominent, it was actually just some good timing in terms of what was going on in the comics. X-Men's original run actually ended in 1970 due to the series being cancelled. X-Men would return, but not until the mid-70s. Issue 137 of the Avengers, featuring Beast as a new member on probation, came out in July of 1975. For Hank, this was just after he'd been transformed into the big, bouncing blue beast that we have come to love today. X-Men returned a few months later in August, with Chris Claremont starting his run in issue 94 of X-Men. In other words, the X-Men team being defunct provided some freedom for Beast to join the Avengers, and writers kinda just liked the idea of him working on the team and probably just also loved his look, so it happened. And there was no X-Men at the time, so made sense. Seriously, there have been so many X-Men who have joined up on the Avengers, and even at times it's almost gone the other way around. Remember when Falcon was a proclaimed mutant by Professor X himself for like a hot second? It was believed for a brief moment in time that the reason he was actually so good with his falconry was because of a potential telepathic connection with his falcon, allowing him to communicate with his bird in a way that normal people couldn't. However, this idea was presented and then almost immediately scrapped and thrown out, so sadly Falcon was never offered a position on the X-Men team or fully confirmed as a mutant, but how cool would that have been? Number 10, Bishop. Bishop's powers are based in energy manipulation, as so many other heroes from his time period were. And no, I don't mean the future, I mean the time in which he was created in the comics. The 90s. What a time. Still, Lucas Bishop is one of the few heroes who withstood the test of time and is currently a main character in the comics today, appearing as part of the Marauders team and as Red Queen Kitty Pryde's Red Bishop within the Hellfire Trading Company. I'm so happy that Bishop got to be a bishop. It's too perfect. It's so perfect. Bishop is considered an alpha level mutant and is often known for brandishing his future XSE guns, which he can recharge with any energy he has absorbed and stored. Pretty useful. We're talking near unlimited ammo, as long as he has some kind of energy coming his way. Number 9. Wolverine, aka Laura Kinney, formerly known as X-23. Laura has since taken up the mantle of Wolverine after her genetic father Logan. She too is now known as Wolverine, so we get to have 2 of them on the island of Krakoa. Yay! Just like that, they gave Laura that title, but didn't feel like they had to take it away from her after Logan himself was using it again in his own self-titled series. It feels very respectful to let her keep it. Also, Laura definitely deserves our respect, as she is not only extremely durable like Logan, possessing her own healing factor, but is also an immensely skilled and deadly fighter, who you would likely not want to mess with, being trained since birth. Wolverine is currently part of the newest X-Men roster, featured in the 2021 book, but has also been an ally and member here and there throughout the years. And before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to show up by clicking that like, and we've got a little announcement for you. We have a new channel coming your way. What? It is called Top 10 Nerd Elite, and if you want all that good bonus content, you need to go over there and you need to subscribe. Number 8. Sync. Everett Thomas just recently saw an amazing power boost in the comics. So amazing in fact that it actually took me forever to collect the issue in which it was featured, issue 18 of the previous X-Men run from 2019. Don't worry though, I finally tracked it down, so my collection as such is complete. Perfect. And honestly, I get why it was such a highly coveted issue. It also features Sync's rainbow aura that shines through when he is using his ability and syncing up with other mutants. Up until recently, Sync's powers gave him the ability to temporarily take on the powers of mutants near him, syncing up with them. But as of issue 18, he can now sync up with any superhuman being. And it's also been implied before that with more experience, he could take on the powers of others for longer and perhaps even permanently. Number 7. Wolverine. He's the best there is at what he does, bub. So of course Logan has to make our cut. Wolverine is one of the most popular mutants and X-Men members out there the world over, which gives him a pretty big boost when it comes to what he's capable of. Wolverine might not be Omega or even Alpha level, but he never backs down from a fight, and is not to be underestimated, as he's probably one of the most determined and often noble heroes around. Sure, you might be able to beat him initially, but due to his insane healing factor, Wolverine will often just get back up and keep coming back for more. He's also a super skilled fighter. On more than one occasion, he's taken a bullet to the head and after a few moments managed to recover and get right back up. In alternate realities, we've also seen Wolverine bombarded with energy blasts until he was nothing more than a skeleton, and he still managed to come back from that. Wolverine is tough as nails, but with a heart of gold, which is what makes him such a great X-Men member and just an overall great character. Number 6. Polaris. Polaris is the daughter of Magneto, and with that comes a lot of power and honestly probably a lot of pressure as well. Still, Lorna handles the pressure fairly well and all the other stuff that comes with being Magneto's daughter, like her mind being manipulated when she was a child. Okay, so maybe she didn't handle that whole reveal so great, but she definitely shows just how resilient she can be whenever she has to deal with some of the more challenging parts of being Magneto's heir. Polaris' powers are similar to her father's, allowing her to manipulate magnetic fields, and she is considered an alpha level mutant. More recently in the comics, while using her abilities and with the help of Krakoa, she built the X-Factor's new headquarters on the Mutant Island Nation all in one night. Pretty impressive stuff. Number 5. Juggernaut. Juggernaut is one of the most powerful characters out there in the comics, and while he might not be a mutant and is known for being in fact a longtime X-Men villain, neither of these things stopped him from eventually joining the team. This was all around the time that Juggy had lost most of his powers, with Kane having a falling out with Sidorak and ultimately deciding to patch things up with his stepbrother Charles Xavier. He joined the X-Men and during his time there surprisingly made a good number of friends, including the mutant known as Squid Boy. Poor Squid Boy. RIP, who would attempt to blow the whistle when he found Kane in a meeting with the Brotherhood. Kane actually was operating as a mole, hoping to play along long enough to learn of the Brotherhood of Mutants' plans and warn the X-Men of them. Such a tragic story! Number 4. Magneto. Magneto obviously has to make our cut. Despite being a powerful X-Men villain, like Juggernaut, he too has been an ally to the team and even at one point was a member. Magneto had a few instances where he worked alongside the X-Men and even at one point saved them from imprisonment. He eventually attempted to join up with them but was initially denied membership by Professor X. Later, however, Magneto would ally himself with the team during their time together on Battleworld and eventually would end up joining the team and acting as a leader of sorts after Professor X was injured. During his time on the team, Magneto would also become the teacher of the New Mutants, which I love. Number 3. Storm. Storm is of course one of the most powerful mutants out there, and definitely one of the most powerful X-Men members. Not just for her amazing powers either, but also for her skills as a leader and a fighter. Recently during the pre-Hellfire Gala issue of Marauders, in honor of their valuable teammate Storm, the Marauders came together to share their favorite Storm stories and moments. We also learned just how dangerous Storm can be even without her powers, and as awesome as she is with them, I think some of my favorite Storm moments recently have actually involved her fighting hand to hand, or with her famous and perhaps endless supply of knives. We still don't really know for sure how many knives Storm has on her at all times. At the very least, we know it's 8 though. And if you want to check out that very heavy Storm issue of Marauders, you can check it out in issue 20. Number 2. Marvel Girl. Marvel Girl is one of the greatest and most powerful X-Men members out there, and really no powerful X-Men members list can be complete without her. Sadly, sort of, as I did want Storm to take my number 1 spot on this list honestly. I was really like, I really want to make Storm number 1. Jean Grey has done a lot of good and a lot of bad, but whatever side she happens to be on as Marvel Girl, Phoenix, or Dark Phoenix, the fact remains that she's always pretty unstoppable. Unless, of course, she wants to be stopped. Even back when she was originally introduced in the comics, back in issue number 1 of the Uncanny X-Men, she stood out, at least to me, as having the most potential in terms of her powers and power levels. Of course, then she'd later succumb to a bit of Princess Peach syndrome, as she would constantly be the member of the team who'd get kidnapped or in some cases be rendered useless because of the limits of how much she could mentally lift being tied to how much she could physically lift, which I don't know, doesn't seem like it should be a thing, but it was a thing at the time. Though later on her limitations could probably be explained away by the mental blocks Xavier had placed in Jean's mind to protect her and others from her insane raw power, which we'd learn about later, of course. And friends, if you also love Jean Grey as much as we love Jean Grey, we also have a really awesome Jean Grey alternates list, so if you want to learn about more powerful versions of her, you should go check that out. It's a good time. Number 1. Tempest. Just because it's hard for me to always succumb to Jean being number 1. Even though I know she deserves it, I know she's number 1, we have Tempest at her number 1 spot today. Because Tempest could literally undo anyone just like that. Like she did with Matthew Malloy, who was set up to be pretty much the most powerful mutant in all of existence, I'd say. His reality manipulation was off the charts. And yet Tempest was able to defeat him by traveling back in time to make sure his parents just never met. Her ability allows her to create time bubbles in which she can control the flow of time. She can slow or speed up time as much as she wants within the bubbles, and can also use her chronokinesis powers to time travel. Time travel initially for Tempest was a little tricky, as her emotions have been shown to affect her abilities, but she has also spent years working to hone them. So at this point in time, she's definitely someone you wouldn't want to piss off. Otherwise, you might go to bed one night and then never wake up again, because Tempest decided to erase you from existence. Number 10. Ink. Not all X-Men members are mutants, and Ink is one prime example. Ink actually did believe he was a mutant initially, and so did the rest of the X-Men, until we learned that his tattoo artist was actually the mutant in this scenario. Through his mutant tattoo artist, Ink has different tattoos, and each give him a different power. He has even managed to channel the powers of the Phoenix Force before through a Phoenix tat, which was over his eye. Basically, with Ink, he can have any power that his tattoo artist, Leon Nunez, gives him. We haven't seen him for a while, but he was listed in the Ten of Swords event handbook as being an active member of the X-Men. So we can assume he's somewhere on Krakoa, mostly chilling probably, but still available to use his tattoos and his powers when needed. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to let us know, because I want to do a part 3. I got a lot of mutants, and I want to talk to you about them. We also have a new channel, it's called Top 10 Nerd Elite, and you need to go check it out and subscribe for all of the good bonus content. We're gonna have lots of exciting things on there, so go subscribe now and be ready. Number 9. Gambit. Gambit might not be the most powerful mutant on this list, and may sometimes be more of a background member of the team in terms of what he's up to or just in terms of fighting, but he has a lot of potential. We've seen alternate realities where the full potential of Gambit's powers were realized, putting him at an almost god level in terms of what he was actually capable of. Gambit's powers allow him to supercharge objects with kinetic energy, causing them to explode through accelerating the molecules that make up said object. He can do this to something small or something large, but the bigger the object, the longer it can take for him to charge it. He has, however, proven how dangerous he can be even just by charging smaller objects that can get up close to vital areas, such as your face and your neck, like necklaces or earrings. Boom. I would not want him to supercharge any of the object close to my face. None of my pins, please. They're like right over my heart. Yikes. Number 8. Cyclops. Not just powerful because of his optic blasts, but Cyclops also brings the power of his amazing tactical and leadership skills, which also adds to his power and makes him a more valuable X-Men member. I actually also just got a really cool, I just ordered like a Cyclops pin. It's gonna have his optic blast like going outside of the border of the pin. I'm so excited for it to arrive. Initially in the comics when Cyclops first appeared, he was also made out to be the most powerful member of the team, with his optic blast being considered to be one of the most useful powers when it came to fighting enemies. At least that's what it seemed like. Every time they had someone really strong, they're like, Cyclops, use your optic blasts! Or initially they didn't call them optic blasts, but that's what we call them now, so. Cyclops is also a master of trigonometry and knows how to fire an optic blast to hit just about anything due to his insane math skills. That's truly mathematical. Number 7. Kate Pryde. Kitty Pryde, as she was once known, or Shadow Cat, is an immensely powerful mutant who can make herself and others intangible. As such, Kate proves to be a very skilled fighter when integrating her abilities into her fighting styles. She's also a protege of Wolverine's, and you can definitely see that when it comes to some of her fighting skills and some of her moves. Kate now also holds a position of power on Krakoa, being a member of the Hellfire Trading Company and allying herself with Emma Frost, the White Queen, in becoming the Red Queen of that company. Due to her unique abilities, Kate is unable to use Krakoan gates, and this is almost something that caused her to be unable to emerge from her pod when being resurrected after dying in the comics. Kate can phase people and objects and has managed to phase a giant bullet through the earth, saving all life on it, and while Power Boost also phased an entire planet through an amber casing. Number 6. Professor X, or just X as he's sometimes known now. Professor X has always been thought of as one of the most powerful members of the X-Men. He was the first leader and teacher of the team who not only pushed his mutants to be better, sometimes controversially so, but also showed up initially to save the day when an opponent proved to be too challenging for the heroic youngsters. Professor X can also shut off your brain, he can make you forget who you are, so he's definitely not someone you'd want to fight. Unless you got a really strong mind, I guess. Professor X has low-level telekinetic skills and powerful telepathic skills that allow him to manipulate, alter, and probe the minds of others, as well as communicate telepathically from a great distance and sense other mutants. He also is now pretty much permanently wearing Cerebro, so he's got a pretty big boost to his power levels, also acting as the important Google Drive of sorts for the mutant minds on Krakoa, so that if they die, he can use a backup of their mind to resurrect them. So he's pretty important. Number 5. Iceman. Of course Iceman has to make our cut this time around. Bobby has had such a glow up when it comes to his powers and what he's capable of since he first appeared in the comics. At one point he managed to create a flash freeze so powerful that he successfully temporarily froze over all of hell, or a version of hell at least. It's kinda hard to tell in Marvel Comics sometimes. He's also managed to change states, allowing him to travel vast distances quickly as he moves through and as water. He can also manipulate water as well as ice and snow. Not only that, but he's managed to use his powers to create clone-like life forms, creating ice or snow clones to aid him and his allies in battle. Iceman has come a long way from being a snowman lookalike sporting his little black booties in his early days. I do miss those black booties though. Where they at? Number 4. Rogue. Rogue is definitely one of the most powerful mutants out there. She also happens to be one of my all-time favorites. Something about wanting to be closer to people but always kind of feeling like you were so removed from them or had to for some reason keep your distance. The idea of like guarding yourself. Those feelings of isolation just really spoke to me, and honestly still sometimes do. Although it should be noted that Rogue has since come much more into her own, with her gaining more control over her power, meaning that she is no longer as burdened with having to worry about her hurting those she cares for. Rogue's powers allow her to absorb the powers and even memories of others through touch, and abilities too, so it's not just like superhuman people that she can take the skills of. She can take on multiple powers at once, but the setback is that her touch can also drain the life force energy of whoever she makes contact with. I mean, drawback and a plus in some cases. It turns out that the loss of control of her powers came from a very real place for most of us. Her own fear of being close to people, of intimacy, and of acceptance. For Rogue, she just had to make the choice to accept herself and not be afraid, and it was through that self-realization, that basically therapeutic work, that she was able to take control of her abilities. So if you see her making out with Gambit a ton in the comics recently, that's why. And if you see Rogue coming your way, you don't have to be afraid. Unless you're one of the baddies, of course. And then be afraid. And probably run. Number 3. Moira X. Moira X is also known to many of us still by the name Moira McTaggart. Though it was unknown for many years, Moira herself is a mutant. She was thought to be a human member and ally to the X-Men for many years, but in House of X it was revealed that Moira is actually a mutant whose power is reincarnation. But not in the traditional sense of reincarnation. After Moira dies, she doesn't just come back to life as like a new person, she lives her life all over again from the beginning. According to Destiny, Moira will likely only live through 10 lives, perhaps 11 if she makes the right plays, meaning that she isn't immortal, but she does bring with her to each life more and more knowledge in terms of how events can play out, which has brought us to the life and reality that she exists in today, with the fantastically powerful mutant island nation of Krakoa. Krakoa basically would not exist without Moira, which to me seems pretty powerful. All that knowledge. And I see her with Destiny's journals. What is she doing? What's going on? Number 2. Kid Omega. Kid Omega is Quentin Quire, another very feasible Phoenix Force host. Despite being younger and somewhat less experienced, and the running gag at the beginning of the Dawn of X era where he'd pretty much die each issue, he is still considered to be extremely powerful. Quentin is an Omega level telepath and telekinetic. He is also hyper intelligent due to his capacity to think at high speeds and the way his mind organizes thoughts. He can accomplish feats that not even the immensely powerful mutant Rachel Summers could manage, which is pretty impressive. Rachel Summers is also pretty powerful. Rachel Summers should also be on one of these lists. Number 1. Vulcan. Vulcan is pretty insanely powerful, and in a dangerous way too, because he's so capable of evil due to being manipulated during his time in the Vault. In fact, in Empire we saw a fraction likely of what his darker side was capable of when he ran into the Kotati while out for a walk on the blue area of the moon, where the Summers house is located. He attempted to deal with the situation peacefully when he approached them, showing mercy initially, but when provoked his darker side was unleashed, causing him to kill everyone save one member of the Kotati, who was left basically traumatized, uncontrollably uttering the word Krakoa on repeat. Vulcan is believed to be beyond even Omega levels when it comes to his powers. What are some of your favorite mutants? Who do you think— wait, what? Who? As though they're objects. What mutants do you like? Chair? Desk? Table?